So, brief introduction, Brendan Walker. I'm heading up digital for the drug substance manufacturing network at Moderna. Been working in the industry for a little while. I've noticed a lot of friendly faces in the crowd who I've known from before. Prior to my role at Moderna, I was heading up the MES COE at Lonza globally. So quite a bit of experience in starting up greenfield sites historically.
And hi, my name is Milan Madani. I'm part of the Moderna digital team, CMC, and I'm leading the projects for the drug product MES at 2 sites, one in Australia and one here in the Norwood site. I've been in the industry for a long time. Those who know me, my passion is about integrating MES, AI, and ecosystems to enhance the integrated user experience. Back in the days, we started with the integrated systems. Now it's integrated user experience. So thanks for listening to us.
So I want to take everybody back to their favorite time in history, which is when the world was shut down, everything was locked up. Conversely, very good time for us at Moderna. So the golden years. One of the things that it kind of taught us, or at least reminded us, is the true risk that a major health emergency plays globally, right? Does anyone in the crowd know how many people died, let's say, in like the Spanish influenza outbreak? It's a bad number. It's like 30 to 50 million, something like that, right? COVID, they estimate anywhere between 18 to 47 million. And respiratory viruses have been a major burden on human society, probably for our entire existence. So one of the other things, and it's very relevant today, and today's a kind of current political landscape, is that if you remember then, supply chains effectively shut down across countries, right? So I was actually over in Switzerland, we were building up the Swiss site, and it was impossible for us to get, single-use parts, raw materials, any sort of pharmaceutical ingredient into the country. And this is when countries began to realize that actually pharmaceutical products maybe aren't only there for profit, maybe they're not only there for being able to help certain things, but actually it's a matter of national security, right? So a number of countries, I remember this was in the news over in Switzerland, I was always shocked when anyone was getting signed. But different governments were looking to build strategic vaccine capacity locally onshore. So we kicked this off with a number of different countries, the UK, Australia, Canada. If you want to pop over to the next. Yeah, we'll go to here. Yeah. So Canada, UK, Australia, we were also initially looking at Kenya and a number of other countries potentially in the future. And the goal of this is really to establish a standard facility design that can be deployed around the world where we can, in the event of a pandemic, rapidly manufacture hundreds of millions of doses in a 6 to 12 month time frame and vaccinate the world's population. It's actually pretty interesting because it's not only a part of our strategic plan to address public health emergencies, but it's also a very, very important thing for those nations in terms of how they're planning to protect their populace. So, bit of a mission statement there. I won't read through it, but we can pop on to the next slide. So, if you can imagine the challenge of this, Moderna in 2019 was a clinical manufacturing company with a few small-scale projects, one site in Norwood, Massachusetts. We rapidly scaled during the pandemic. We manufactured billions of doses, shipped them around the world. Seems great, right? We also did have the help of the U.S. government's logistic arm, with the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, everything else to help us. There were even times where you'd have like an AHU that got stuck in traffic and they would send a helicopter to fly it up to the site so that we could build it and manufacture faster. So logistical challenges were basically unheard of. That was great. And then, coming out of the pandemic, we realized, actually, we had signed contracts with another number of different governments around the world to be able to manufacture vaccines about 1.5 years later as greenfield sites. It was no longer the pandemic. We no longer had helicopters, right? So, very, very different scenario. So how do you go from a clinical stage company and actually build 3 sites simultaneously at large scale, in different countries, in different continents, on an extremely tight timeline with government contracts on the line. So the first thing is you need to absolutely prioritize the platform. This goes back to one of our core values as an organization. What does that mean, right? When we say it internally, it's really talking about our product platform. It's the standard kind of overall technology to make RNA. But actually, when you look at platform in a broader sense, it's the facility design. It's your platform process technology. It's your SOPs. It's how people operate. It's how you train people. It's how you validate those facilities. Even potentially regulatory strategies between the countries and the digital systems that you deploy. The other big part of this is accepting risk and acting with urgency. Two other core values. Even with standardized designs, you can have the best plans in the world. Things can happen. In the UK, we started digging and we found a catapult. Not the exciting medieval trebuchet kind. It was one of the ones from the World Wars. Unsurprisingly, it was next to the European Institute of Catapult Research. That is not a joke. It legitimately exists, and it is in Swindon in the UK. Or not Swindon, sorry. Yeah. So, things will happen, and you need to be flexible. You need to manage to really push past your limits in deploying this around the world. And we've been very lucky to have a team that's been willing to kind of go on that journey with us. The other thing is there's always a bit of a balance between the local needs, right? You're going to have different local regulatory interpretations. You're going to have different local laws on which materials you can use versus global ambitions of maintaining that standard and that platform. The other thing, of course, and I know it was recently talked about, is you're building a new site. You've got new staff. You might be hiring a team of butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, right? Not every place in the world has a great biological experience in the manufacturing space, right? And the designs that you're doing need to accommodate for this. So when you're deploying digital systems, it's very important to think, how is someone going to come in off the street, going through training for 2 weeks, with very, very little time based on the project timelines, and manage to make a drug, right? So it's really about coming up with a good, strong, recipe-driven architecture so that they can manufacture, they can come in on their first day and know what they're doing, and your system set them up for success. So we kicked off a program called Unify. You guys have heard about it at least 6 times today via different names. It's that unified data fabric with the MES, contextualized at the automation layer, single sources of truth. I won't go through it again. But that was essentially the strategy behind it. So you can pop on. So the main goals we had with this, unify the data, create a single language that our systems would talk through, a single set of really based on S95 standards that every single system would map into so that we could look at each one of them in the same way, right, using the same kind of reporting mechanisms. So centralizing our ability to perform analysis, centralizing our ability to do reporting, and then also making sure that all of our systems had the actual context built into them, starting at the automation layer, through the MES, through our batch reporting, through the data we're getting from SAP and LIMS. What this also allowed us to do is unify how our operations worked. We had standard sets of SOPs. We had standard text across them. In certain cases, it was also displayed in French. But it had exactly the same information mapped to the same portions in the reports. And really to create a centralized way of managing these sites globally, right? The intent behind these is, again, pandemic preparedness. So if something comes through, you get a new strain, the expectation is we'd be able to essentially manufacture a bullet batch, which comes out of research and goes through manufacturing in a 2-week time frame. Basically doing a tech transfer in under 2 weeks globally. So that's the kind of design constraints that we actually had for the facilities when we were building them.
Okay, so how do we achieve this? There are 3 pillars of success, right? We all know this: people, process, and technology. I hope you guys hear me properly. Okay. So what we did was, first comes the people, right? So we have the Moderna mindset of being digital biotech company, technology wherever it's possible and wherever it's feasible. We ingrained into the culture and adaptability within the people, and it is designed for people, right? So it's a recipe-driven operations on the platform process. So like Brendan talked about it, it's the process itself is a platform process, so it makes it more standardized process across wherever you implement that. And then you have a digital app and digital technology and digital partner. So we actually partner with Apprentice for our drug product manufacturing and standardize that with our Tempo as a solution for our drug product. So that's how we achieved, or where we are strive to achieve for the next 2 sites there. So initially, we started, as we said, Moderna is a technological company, and the aspiration was to go technology end-to-end wherever possible. So we kind of took a step back and looked at it and see what makes sense, because people, like you said, people are new. It's developing this technology within the process in-house. The technology, that's Apprentice Tempo, we are introducing as a new technology, and also the process is new, the drug product. So how do we really still implement it, but not really say, okay, we're not biting too much in it? So we kind of took a step back and decided and agreed upon the process as well as the technology and the scope itself. So we are still doing end-to-end in all these areas like buffer prep, formulation, fill and finish, visual inspection, and pack and label. And the scope is mostly all the functions of MES, as you know, so I'm not going to go with that. And with the integration with ERP, full integrations, and just the minor integration with automation. That means we connect to automation just for the batch information. We are not biting too much at the start with. So all the other ones like connecting to the equipments, passing parameters, all those things I think will come in the phase 2. And in the phase 2 also integrate with other systems like LIMS and Maximo, what makes sense. However, we deviate a little bit on the scope. We now have the scale integration done and read the scale directly through automation as well. So that's where we are. We started with the process mapping with the cross-functional team. That includes the MSNT, the operations, the digital, and the quality as well. So I think that's kind of set a good tone to start the project with, and we get all the feedback right up front. So we are not bringing quality later, we are not bringing manufacturing later, they're right there within the team. And you start implementing and process mapping it. That actually shows a template or the baseline source for the template that we build with the Apprentice Tempo there. So that's how we achieved that. We are not live yet, but in a couple of months we are going live with our Australia site and followed by one in Norwood. So greenfield to go live in 1 year. I remember we kickstarted this process, this project, sometimes this March of last year with Australia site. And we authored like 26 procedures, templatized procedures, like digital first. And then that includes the drug product and the fill and finish with full integration with SAP and a partial integration with automation there. All right, some of the key new feature enhancement that we really partner with Apprentice and get this in the product. Some have been delivered, like TIR, TOR has been delivered. There was a number of other ones, but there are other things that are in works, because one facility, the commercial facility in Resilience is a commercial facility, but in Norwood we have a clinical manufacturing as well. How do we turn around for the new product introduction? So that's where the multi-product recipe template comes into play, the read-write and the passing of the parameter values between the procedures, more web executions, and migration flexibility enhancements there, label and type and content and reporting capability. So those are some of the high level that we kind of feed into the product as well, but it's really a partnership, right? Making the product better and serve us as well.
I think maybe one important bit of context for everybody there, the resilient sites have a bit of a unique building case just due to the pandemic nature of them, right? Is that there's a combination of a drug substance facility and a drug product facility in the location or within the plan for each one of them. So on the drug substance side, we had a historical architecture that we were working with, which we deployed across all of them in a slightly different model. And I would say that we probably had, for a given product, maybe more experience than anybody else in the world in terms of sheer batch count of that product, right? If you're looking at 1 batch every 3 days multiplied by, 18 trains for a 2.5, 3 year window, right? So we're talking data sets of thousands, right? Maybe even potentially tens of thousands of batches that were run on a single product. In the drug product space, right? It was a really very different thing. This was our first time doing it internally. It was our first time building it. We had to learn the process as we were building a site with a new set of technology.
Yeah, right? New technology, new people, new process. That's why we had to curtail down some of the scopes there. Oops, sorry. I don't know why it's popped up there.
Hopefully nothing confidential.
I know that. But I think that's where I think the emphasis on the partnership and how we standardize our templates across multiple sites and still achieve the results that we wanted to achieve in terms of the flexibility for the configuration there.
And an important bit that I've always found in kind of running MES projects is also just being very, very cognizant of your business, right? To the analogy of boiling the ocean, in certain cases, it might be an ocean if you try to boil it, right? And in the case of learning a fully new process, bringing it on for the first time, you don't want to go for maybe something that's fully integrated, fully automated, aiming for that predictive plant layer when you've never turned on the machine before, right? It's a lot easier to do when you really know your process, when you have built-in expertise at your company on how to run it, and it makes it easier. Your costs are lower and the valuation of your projects are higher.
That's the last slide here. Thank you for listening to us.